Coming up, the NBA closer to returning to action. MLB players are unhappy with the latest offer, and a look back on the match between Tiger and Peyton versus Phil and Tom. But first, the NFL announces new rules for the 2020 season.
This is Beyond the Stats with Tanner Camp and Zachariah Begley.
So, Zach, the NFL has announced that there are some new rule changes for the upcoming 2020 season. Let's go ahead and just break down what those rules are.
Yeah, so looking at some of the rules that happened, so expanded automatic replay. So they'll be adding replay to negated touchdowns and turnovers by penalty. So that's the new one added. Obviously, every scoring play is reviewed, every touchdown is reviewed. And they're also adding, they are adding one more thing. They're adding attempts, so play attempts. Or try attempts, so like field goals and things like that. They're adding expanded defensive player rules. So if a player on a kickoff or return, a player is considered defenseless until they can feasibly make a football move. Then there's game clock manipulation. So this is because of teams using dead ball penalties to save game clock. The clock will no longer stop for those in the fourth quarter and overtime, unless are already deemed to be stopped due to other reasons. And then the last one is one more player can be taken off IR. So up from 2 to 3 players. But now the terminology for when you can come back has changed from weeks to games. So before you could come back in 8 weeks, and now it's 8 games. So if you have a bye week in the middle, the bye week doesn't count anymore. Those are kind of the rules that have changed, Tanner.
So, Zach, as we kind of look back at these rules, I think there's some really important ones that are here. I think for myself personally, the defenseless player one, in my opinion, I think is really important. And I think that's because we've seen a lot of this, especially in the past couple of seasons, where a player is trying, as they're getting ready to return, whether it be a punt or a kickoff, primarily for punts, that they are not in that they are in a defenseless position sometimes. And when we were talking about this, as we went over everything, it's basically as long as they can catch the ball and then they can have like 1 or 2 steps to get ready to go around the tackle. So I think that is a very important rule and the most important on this list. But I'm really curious to think for yourself and for the overall game, which one do you think is the most important for all teams in the NFL?
So I think the defenseless player move is probably going to be it's a player safety rule. I mean, player safety is always important. The one thing that I'm going to see, which is the trouble, I think, could be what is considered a defensive player on punts and returns. And I think that will always be a question. We've had the trouble with the catch rule for years. What can happen there? And I wouldn't be surprised if a similar thing is happening for defenseless players in the coming future. The other thing is, I think changing the term for weeks to games is pretty big on the injured reserve list, because what does that like? How is that going to affect season? So because that means a player that got injured in week 1, put on IR, can't return now until week 10 instead of week 9 if there's a bye week at somewhere in the middle there. And that can really actually affect teams because two important players that got put into reserve for different teams. One of them has a bye week, one of them doesn't. The team that doesn't have a bye week all of a sudden can get that player back a week early. And if they're ready to go, I mean, that can really affect a win or loss and get the playoffs. For the most part, it probably won't, but there could be some cases where that happens.
And I think with the automatic replay review, replay has been something that has really always kind of been talked about throughout the league, throughout fans for the last couple of years, especially, with when they can use it, when they can't. So I think this is one that I think a lot of teams will agree on and we've seen this throughout the course, especially recently, where teams have actually lost games because they could look at a replay, they couldn't look at a replay. What do you think the biggest impact on that rule is going to be especially as the kind of new part to it is that for a successful or unsuccessful PAT or field goal attempt. Is there anything that really kind of stands out with that, or any previous games that you think this rule could have especially affected?
I can't think of a time when a kick went in or didn't go in, or it should have gone in or didn't go in, but then they called it good, or yeah, they called it the wrong thing. But I mean, they already review every score, and they do it quick enough that it doesn't even really, like, it's not going to really slow down the game. So I don't see this happening, but it could come up in a big moment where the review actually comes in handy. So we'll see kind of what happens there. But yeah, I can't think of a time when that really mattered. But it's better to, I think, do that. The one I think is the negated plays by penalty scores, because that could that could, like, you see a touchdown run, but then there's a foul or a penalty away from the ball, and all of a sudden you're calling, yeah, it's getting called back because of that. And I don't know. Yeah, is that gonna? How many times are we gonna lose plays or gain plays because a foul was called, but there really wasn't a foul, or things like that?
It'll be interesting to see how these rules really affect the game once it comes back to live action. And then also how fans will react to that as we all eagerly await the start of the NFL season. The NBA is getting closer to returning to action. We'll talk about that. This is Tanner Camp with Zachariah Begley, and this is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. Zachariah Begley alongside the wonderful Tanner Camp. We're going to be talking about the NBA, what's going on, and what it could look like when it returns. So the NBA target date for return is July 31st, Tanner. And I don't see a reason why it won't at least be close to that. But there are some things that they're talking about doing. So the proposed format that is going to be voted by the NBA governing board on this coming Thursday will be playing every game in Orlando, Florida, as well as 20 to 22 teams joining in. So how that works is, if they do 22 teams, which means every team that is within 6 games of making the playoffs or 5 games of making the playoffs, will have they'll play some regular season format and then play a tournament for the last teams at the bottom as a play-in to get into the playoffs. And then if they do a 20-team league, they'll do a World Cup style format with group play, and then obviously a tournament after that. So each team will play each other like twice, like the FIFA World Cup, and then they'll do a bracket tournament after the top 2 teams from each group. Each group makes a tournament.
And Zach, as we kind of look at this, first off, going with the play games in Orlando, I think that's the right move. Put all the teams in one location. They've got the space for that, and it's going to keep them in the best possible and safest way to play games while not having to do too much traveling with everything that's going on. So that's the right move. And that was pretty decided as they were going through trying to figure out a way to get the season back pretty early on, but this definitely has been confirmed. And then I really like I would love the decision for that kind of FIFA style. And I think part of the reason is it gives teams a chance to get back to game speed. As a former basketball player, when it comes to practices and going against, other players, it's a completely different feeling once you get that game speed. And I would be completely shocked to find out how teams would play if they went straight into the playoffs and like, all right, by the way, here you go. Your run for a championship starts now, which I guess could be interesting to see where everyone would be at. And if those players who have stayed in shape and worked out, gotten in the gym, those players who have been kind of laxing a little bit and throughout this whole COVID-19 pandemic. But I really like the FIFA style. I think that would just bring a lot more entertainment. And more importantly, it also bring, I think, a lot more games to the fans. But most importantly for the players, get a chance to get that competition speed again, and an idea for other team that you would play against. So I really like that style, and I think that would draw in a lot of fans.
So I agree with you. The 20-team format I think is better. NBA players said no matter what, they don't want to go straight into the playoffs. So I don't think that will happen. I would say I'm 99% sure that will happen. They'll do some sort of gameplay before they get into the postseason tournament bracket. So I think the 20-team World Cup format is more interesting. So here's the difference. So the 22. So to lay it out, if they did 20 teams, the teams that aren't technically in the playoffs are the Washington Wizards, Sacramento Kings, Portland Trailblazers, San Antonio Spurs. I named 4. There's 2 more that I can't think of off the top of my head at the moment. But if they did the 20 format, they would lose the Wizards and the Suns. So it'd be two team difference, obviously. And I don't think the Wizards and the Suns really are vying for a chance to win a championship based off of their current rosters. So I think the 20-team format is better. Also, I think it's a more interesting format. Because you never know what could happen. I mean, you could get a team gets on fire for a couple of games, and then a team that in the normal style would make the playoffs doesn't make the playoffs, doesn't get out of group stage. So it's really interesting, and I think the 20-team format is the way to go. Yeah, that's really all we have on that. We'll be back talking about the MLB and what's going on. Are we going to play the season or not? Coming up, this is Beyond the Stats.
Welcome back to Beyond the Stats. I'm Tanner Camp, alongside the one and the only Zachariah Begley. So, Zach, Major League Baseball players, it's been reported that they're quite unhappy with the latest financial proposal to start the 2020 season that would be shortened, obviously, due to COVID-19. I've got a quick quote from John Heyman from MLB Network, and he found out that there are a number of players who just frustrated and upset, described as pretty galvanized after talking to that. And he noted that there were some that didn't even believe that it was worth countering. Now, others who viewed it as just part of the process of collective bargaining. Zach, when you talk about this, we've talked about this one other time, and then obviously a couple times on our own. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear about the players who are unhappy with the latest financial proposal?
Yeah, we did talk about this last week. Well, if you're watching on YouTube, we'll put a card in so you can go straight to that video after you watch this one. But yeah. So basically, the big holdup is the money. Majority of players aren't happy with the money proposal. A lot of them feel if they agree to this for the 2020 season, it can open the door for the owners to slide in a salary cap, which would it would cap out salaries and players would make less money, or teams would be worse. It'd be things like that. Like you wouldn't have Giancarlo Stanton or Mike Trout or Bryce Harper making $300 million plus contracts anymore. Basically, if the salary cap put in, and they want to keep their money the way they're doing it. So, I mean, in my opinion, it means that the MLB season is less likely to happen now than it was last week. And one other thing I would like to say, what super agent Scott Boras said. He told players not to take less money because they're just as important as the owners in needing to play here. So I don't see a way for money to come in because a lot of players and a lot of fans are not wanting, or not a lot of fans, sorry, just a lot of players are not wanting to take less money. And the owners want them to take less money to make the season happen. So unless they get this money thing resolved in the next couple of days, I mean, like next week, it just keeps dropping the time in which we're less likely to have a season.
And Zach, I've actually seen a couple of charts that have shown what those potential salary cuts would be. And the numbers that surprised me the most, those, let's say for a full year, that would make 35 million, drop not even to 8 million, around just a little more than 700 or $7 million. And then those who make a million would drop even below 500,000. So it is understandable for the players to be frustrated with those cuts. But again, we talked about this, if the players really wanted to play the game, they wouldn't mind that. And that's something that we didn't get a chance to also talk about with the shortened season for the NBA in the previous segment. But sticking with baseball, those cuts, I would understand if you're a player who makes a lot of money that gets that cut. But do you think, and what do you think needs to change, or how significant do those cuts need to be in order for players to even come slightly close? Because as you said, this is almost a step back for the MLB to try to get their season back.
Yeah, that's hard to say. I would say that the MLB. Man, we're talking about the NBA so much, I'm jumping to things. The MLB it's hard to say, because I honestly don't think the players want to cut at all. Like, they just want to keep their salary, and they're like, you're paying us, you're the owner, you take the cut, you own the team, not me. It's not my fault. But it's hard to say. If I understand the owners asking for a cut because everyone's losing money, they're like, we're losing money, can you help us out a little bit by losing money also? And the players are like, no. And the owners aren't gonna give I don't think the owners will ever give them the full amount. So maybe they have to cut back less. Maybe the players will take that, but unless they can get some form of guarantee that this will only be for 2020 and they won't try to push the salary cap based off of what happened this year, maybe the players will accept, because I think that's where a lot of the stick up is they're afraid changes now will make changes later. And they want to make their money. So it's hard to say. It really is.
Well, hopefully there'll be a new proposal soon that'll find a way, because you and me, I think we can both agree that we were optimistic beforehand, but with this, it really starts to kind of worry a lot of MLB fans, including, again, both of us. So hopefully they can find a new proposal to make this work. But after this, it's going to be very challenging. That's going to wrap up this segment. But when we come back, we're going to look back on the match number 2 between Tiger Woods and Peyton Manning versus Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady. Once again, Tanner Camp alongside Zachariah Begley. This is Beyond the Stats.
Back here on Beyond the Stats, Tanner Camp, Zachariah Begley, talking about what we like to call the match. It's the match between Tiger Woods, Peyton Manning, Phil Mickelson, Tom Brady. So just to clarify what happened, it happened last Sunday, so 6 days ago from today, just to clarify. So Tiger and Peyton won. For those of you who don't know, which is probably almost none of you, to be honest. Tiger evened the match, won the series 1-1 with Phil, and $20 million total dollars are raised for research for COVID-19 pandemic. Yeah. So Tanner, what are your initial thoughts about what happened with the match?
Well, Zach, first off, going into this, you knew Tiger was going to have a little edge on him after losing to Phil in the first match. Obviously, in good spirit, but still, of course, there's that competitive side that we've seen from Tiger throughout his entire career. So it was good for him to see that competitive edge. And with Peyton Manning, a very fun fact that I actually learned just yesterday, that according to Turner Sports, this match actually was the most watched golf telecast in the history of cable television. And it said that it peaked at 6.3 million viewers between 5:45 p.m. and 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I watched the match. It was raining for about half of it, so they still played through. And what made it nice was that it was competitive fun, but it was just fun, because they know, like on certain holes, they said if whoever's nearest to the cup, they're going to donate $125,000 for it. Like, it was just all in good fun, but still had that competitive edge that we like to see from Tiger and Phil, and even from Peyton and Tom. And we saw some great shots. Tom Brady had one that, by hitting a birdie on one of the holes, other golfer, Brooks Koepka, actually donated $100,000 to it. So this is the important thing also, that they started this match with $10 million and the number kept increasing throughout the whole match. So they actually added an additional $10 million from when they started. So again, I watched the whole thing. It was so much fun. They had all the golfers mic'd up and they had video cameras in the carts so they could, get their reactions to certain holes or ask them different questions. But it was all in great fun. It had that competitive side. And Zach, I can't guarantee, but there's got to be a third match between Tiger and Phil. I mean, 1-1, both of them. They do not want to just leave it at that. So as a whole, it was great. It was fun to watch this. They obviously had a great awareness for COVID-19. I follow golf a little bit, so saw some great shots. And again, I hope they do this again, not just obviously for COVID-19, but hopefully in the future. But it was all in good fun, and it was a great match to watch.
Yeah, I was gonna say one thing. It was only a 1-hole difference. So Tiger and Phil only won by, or sorry, Tiger and Peyton.
Yep.
Yeah, they only won by 1 hole. I almost said Tiger and Phil. That would have been big if Tom Brady and Peyton Manning had teamed up and barely lost. But yeah, so Peyton and Tiger won by only 1 hole. Yeah, like you said, a third match happening. Yeah, they can't pass up on a third match. Steph Curry said he wanted to be in on the match, so I kind of hope if they do something, maybe they do similar, but it's basketball players instead of football players, and it'd be like Tiger and Steph Curry versus, I don't know, Phil and Michael Jordan or something like that. Oh, that would be really good. I would watch
Zach,
that would be really fun.
That was a great idea that you had there. And I think what added to it was obviously Tiger, Phil, they've been playing the game a long time, but also Peyton, retired quarterback. I argue one of the best quarterbacks to play the game. And then again, retired, but Tom Brady, still in the league, again, one of the best quarterbacks to play. I think that would help add to it if they did use basketball players. Steph Curry, arguably one of the best players, the NBA, and a current player, and Michael Jordan, again, my opinion, the best basketball player. That's obviously up for debate, but he would play as well. Zach, I think you might have just sparked a really good idea. You're going to have to maybe talk to Tiger and Phil about that one.
All right, check your Twitters. I'm going to be adding them. Check your Twitters. I'm going to be adding you, Tiger and Phil, for sure. Also, obviously Curry and Jordan. I mean, got to get all 4 on board. I think there's number 3 right there. But yeah, that's really all we have in this show. Check us out on social media. Obviously Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at Beyond the Stats. Of course, we're on almost all major podcasting sites. If you can, leave us some feedback. We really appreciate that. And then obviously we're right here on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our content.
We appreciate the time. Join us next time here on Beyond the Stats. Once again, I'm Tanner Camp alongside Zachariah Begley. This has been Beyond the Stats.